are pulled towards the interview. So that is recruitment analytics. And if you see workforce planning and optimization, this planning, workforce planning would help organization to plan in advance, like what is the market, in a market scenario, and what is the internal scenario in internal organization. What are the needs? Are the employees which are needed at the analyst level? Are they needed at the leadership level? At what level do you need? And in order to meet the goals for the company. So that sort of planning is what we are talking about in workforce planning and optimization. Whereas health, productivity, and workforce safety analytics is more towards what type of safety measures and what type of health measures a company have to take care in such a way that they can make sure the employees are safe, and they make sure the health of the employees are also safe. So that sort of analysis is what we are talking about when we are saying health, productivity, and workforce safety analytics. Coming to performance management, it's more towards already existing employees, how they are they performing well, how do we improve their performance, what are the factors which are affecting these performances, can we nudge to make sure that their performance can be improved. Can we make sure what are the factors, if we know the drivers, then definitely one can see how to improve the performance and make sure they can retain the top talent. That's what we are saying about performance management. And coming to organization design, when we are saying organization design, it's more towards, now in order to meet the company goals, you have a company goal, I want to achieve like 100 billion by end of 2 years, then in such a case, in such scenario, how many leaders are you catering to? Do you have that leadership? Do you have enough employees? Do you have enough consultants so that they can actually take care and go and build that goal? They can meet that goal. So thinking through that is nothing but your organization design. And learning development is nothing but, again, this is one of the favorite topics for any talent team. They come up with learning and development plans in each time. So now it's more of a targeted learning and development needs rather than targeting everyone for every session, instead of which you can say this particular pool can go for this particular learnings and developments, and this particular other team can go for other learnings and developments. Those are the strategies which can be taken over. So those are the sort of workforce analytics which can be done when we come and when we talk about workforce analytics here. Abhishek, you want?
Sure. So what you would observe is most of the companies do some sort of work on each of these portfolio that we showed you, but they might be differing in level of maturity in which they are doing these particular or deploying these particular solutions. So you might find that majority of the companies would be doing the basic analytics, which is more sort of the reactive or the controlled approach that we talked about previously. And very few of them would be doing the predictive piece or the cross-selling process, where they are doing a targeted sort of approach and a proactive sort of approach in their HR analytics piece. So moving on to the next slide.
Sure. Just to add to what Abhishek was mentioning here, it's more, if you look at last time we were mentioning about being reactive, controlled, and proactive. So that's where we can ask any company, where do you stand? If they stand on a reactive mode, then they do only basic reporting, not even reporting, and it's a more of a ad hoc reporting. When they go into a more of a controlled version, they do some enhancements to the processes and to the people, and also they do some analysis, but not to the level of modeling. Whereas when we go into the predictive modeling, that's when we say it's a proactive mode. So those are the levels of analytics which we can cover depending upon where the company stands. So we wanted to discuss now, we know what are the challenges faced by C-suite guys and what are the market priorities due to which we need workforce analytics. Now, how do we actually do this workforce analytics? One might be in a question, do we actually have the data to do the analytics? Given that we are all data scientist people, now we want all data. Data proves everything for us. So if there is no data, we can't do anything, right? So given that, now we are interested in knowing what type of data exists and what type of data is actually needed for workforce analytics. If you see, we need internal and external data sources is what generally we use for workforce analytics. Internally, there might be a lot of ERP systems sitting which might be having a valuable information about employees, such as employee education, employee age, employee how much performance they have done, what are the ratings they have, and we also have the details such as what might be the technical skill sets and capabilities they have, how many number of experience they have, whether they are in a manager level or not. Such type of information can be easily available in any of the ERP systems. That is the internally structured data. When it comes to the unstructured data, we are talking about the surveys taken by HR and the surveys conducted by on the Yammer or Twitter, which is internal to your company. So that is nothing but your unstructured data, which we can take into consideration. External resources, Abhishek.
Yeah, so this is sort of like an untapped sort of data sources that you have handy. Yeah. Right. So on the recruitment piece of things, so we'll be talking about that recruitment project that we've done right after this. So I'll be talking about covering that right in a moment.
But I was talking more in the lines of mentorship. How do you know this guy is going to leave in the next 1 month?
Yeah, so there could be several factors playing a role. So I'll just get to that in a moment. But there could be, like in this case, for example, talking about the external sources itself. LinkedIn recently released a report where they say that if a person is updating his LinkedIn profile, 60 to 70% chances that he would change an organization. So there is a tremendous potential for this data to be used in identifying whether a person is at risk or not. But currently there is very little that is being used as of now. So yeah, moving on to the next slide, we'll be discussing about a few case studies. I'll be starting with the retention piece that we have been mentioning now for some time. So, so this particular project involved 3 pieces to it. First is the data mining part of it. Second is the data science part of it. And the third is the behavioral science and the HR aspect of it, which you might have heard from the keynote session that Deva presented in the morning. So in the data mining part of it, so the client here is Reliance, and this is an Indian firm. And the client had very disparate HR systems which were not talking to each other. So we had to bring in a lot of data sources together. Like we've used data like the leaves, the pattern of the leaves that the employee has applied, or his performance metrics, or even his car lease programs. So we've used all the data sources that were available to us on employees within these firms, and we brought everything together into a single master data set. That was the data mining part of it, which took a lot of effort because they were very discrete. Post that, we did the data science part of it, where we created indicators of attrition. One of the question that you asked. So some of those indicators are sort of like if you talk about the leaves, what we've observed that it was a two-way thing, wherein people who were not taking leaves at all, they were also at a much higher risk of leaving, as well as people who have taken more than, say, 20 leaves in the last 3 months, they were also at a higher risk. This is, again, specific to this particular client, but we've created lots of, I think, around 300 such indicators of attrition using all these data sources that we brought together, trying to identify if a particular person is at risk. And in this case, in this specific case, the client had a resignation period or the stay period for about 2 months. So it only makes sense for us to identify that this particular person is at risk, maybe more than, like much before 2 months. So in this case, we try to model this or create indicators in a way that we could predict that he's going to leave 4 months prior to maybe he would put in this resignation. So that's, yeah.
But
Yeah.
how do you know he's actually going to leave?
So we have like validated and built this model as well. So if you think about it, when we actually built this project, we started in January of this year and we finished this in about May. When we finished the modeling process, the client put us in the spot saying, okay, now you had data till January, you've gave me this model. Within this 5 months, run this model and see how many people have actually left and you've predicted that they will leave. So we were kind of put in a spot there to like look at whether our models are actually working or not. And they were about, because these models might not work that well in that shorter duration that we are looking at. Maybe if we look at a year down the line, it would maybe give a good lift in that way. So what we observed was about 50% of the attrition that happened. We were able to effectively capture that, and majority of them were top performers who they wanted to retain. And but the project doesn't stop there. I mean, it's easy to identify whether a person is going to leave the firm based on certain indicators, but even if you know that the person is going to leave, how are you going to engage him back into the firm and make him stay with the firm? That is the more challenging part of this. And this is where we sort of try to bring in the behavioral sciences and also try to do some experiments here. We brought in our HRT folks as well who have experience working into this particular domain. So what we sort of did was we looked at the people who are at risk, and we also looked at what are the factors that are driving these risks. And depending on these factors, we try to create nudges which could engage them back into the firm. To take a specific example, there were people who were about 2 to 3 years into the firm who were high performers, who were at a very high risk of leaving. So for those sort of people, if this model predicts that this person is at a high risk of leaving, we would, a note would go to the manager, his manager, saying, have a discussion with him over coffee, saying that, the goal of giving him certain objectives of the discussion. And the objectives of in this particular case is sort of a more around, have a discussion about his future prospects of growth within the firm. So sort of like engage him back into the firm. That is not a guarantee to make him stay with the firm, but at least you are giving him a positive reinforcement to sort of bring him back into the firm, maybe change his mind. So those are sort of the applications that we've built here as well, wherein the IT has built these smart nudges, which would go to the HR VPs and all these managers, depending on the risk of the employee. So that I think, yeah.
Has it ever occurred that you've gotten to the other side of the equation where the organizations you're working with are actually identifying people who are at high risk and letting them go?
Yeah, it can happen too. Like there are certain segments which were left untouched because we didn't want to take any actions on them because maybe the company was better off letting them go. So
How
they.
did you prevent it? And were you actually putting the caveat right at the beginning of the project that we will not identify segments of employees who might pose high risk and you're better off letting them go?
Yeah, some
No.
of them are like that, right? Some of the people, if you are at risk, and if they are not performing, definitely we would like them to let go rather than retaining them. But there are some employees where are the top talent and they are performing well, and then those are the people whom client would like to retain.
But this is such, this concept is against the ethics of using employee data and violating privacy of people who are trusting you with the data.
No, it's not. It's not about violating the data. It's not about PII information which we are using. What we are using is readily available data, only to understand what are the factors which are driving the retention. Basically, what are the factors which drive you to leave the company? Let us say, for example, if the top employee leaves the firm, then it costs the company a lot. Let us say an underperforming guy who is not at all performing, for him to, for that particular guy, if he leaves, then the company will be in benefit, right? It's more like you're ensuring that company knows well in advance who is about to leave. And if the company or talent thinks that they have to retain, then that's when they strategize it. But of course, if they want to retain, definitely they have to retain.
Just to add another, yeah,
I'm
and
also talking about the biases that can creep in, right? So
Yep.
for example, I've seen that you've been using gender, right? And there are certain ethnicity variables like race, nationality, religion.
Yep.
How are
Right.
you preventing that your analysis is not identified?
No, I think,
yeah. So
Even women for that matter, right?
Right,
Gender
right.
diversity.
So gender actually we didn't use because of that criteria only. Ethnicity and gender, these are barred from the analysis because these are the ethics again comes into play. So therefore those are not taken into account. Only it is totally based upon the performance metrics and how they are having the experience, what type of information they have.
just to add another point, so this, like whatever was done later, like these were not, this scores were not later used to maybe look at their remuneration or packages or things like that. This is more sort of creating some sort of engagement back into the firm where maybe a one-on-one meeting with his manager so that he's more, like maybe whatever problems he's facing, the manager is aware, gets to know about it. Getting that sort of engagement between them, that's what we were going for with this.
So you
One of the potential reasons for attrition cited is the immediate management, which is more of qualitative than quantitative.
Yep.
right.
How does the system takes care of this?
So